My name is Nancy Dutton. I'm 30 years old, and I've always believed that home is where your peace lives. That belief shattered the night I came back from teaching abroad. It had been 2 long months in Japan, a short-term program that felt like a dream come true. I'd spent years building stability. After my 20s fell apart in that apartment, it wasn't just a place to live. It was my proof that I'd made it. Every corner reflected effort, the lavender diffuser in the hallway, the spotless white couch, the books stacked in neat rows. It was my sanctuary, my reward for years of keeping my life under control. That's why my heart started racing the moment I reached my door. It wasn't locked. In fact, it wasn't even fully closed. A thin sliver of darkness gaped between the door and the frame. I froze. For a full 5 seconds, my brain refused to process it. Maybe the cleaning lady forgot to shut it properly, I thought. But I didn't have a cleaning lady. I hadn't left anyone a spare key except my younger sister Lily. The smell hit first. A thick, sour mix of cigarette smoke, stale beer, and grease. My lavender diffuser was gone, replaced by the stench of chaos. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. A man's voice answered from the living room. "Hey, who are you?" I stepped inside slowly. There he was, a stranger sitting on my couch like it belonged to him. A young woman lay sprawled beside him, scrolling on her phone, barely glancing up. "Who am I snapped. "Who are you?" The man frowned. "We rented this place from your sister Lily. What's your problem?" For a moment, I couldn't even speak. My pulse thudded in my ears. "You rented it from my sister." "Yeah," the woman muttered without looking up. "It's our place now. We paid her for the month." It felt like the world tilted beneath me. My mind tried to reject every word. Rent. Paid. My sister. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, this is my apartment. You need to leave. Right now." The man laughed. "We paid lady. We're not going anywhere." "Wrong answer," I said, grabbing my phone. "You've got 2 minutes before I call the police." That finally did it. They exchanged nervous looks, gathering their things in a rush. The woman mumbled something about scammy landlords as they left. When the door clicked shut behind them, silence fell. Heavy, poisonous silence. I looked around and my heart broke. My living room looked like it had survived a week-long party hosted by people who'd never heard of cleaning. Pizza boxes stacked like trophies. Beer bottles rolling under the coffee table. Dirty socks, actual socks, tossed across the floor like confetti. My pristine couch was stained, my coffee table had a chunk missing from the corner, and the air smelled like betrayal. I used to light candles and read by the window at night. Now that same spot felt cursed. Every inch screamed disrespect, and the realization hit me my own sister had done this. I picked up my phone and called my parents. My father, ever the calm one, said he'd come over immediately. Mom's voice was shaky. "Maybe there's an explanation, honey." An explanation, there wasn't one that would make sense. As I waited, I walked through the wreckage, snapping photos of everything: the cracked TV, the missing lamp, the broken dishes. It wasn't just about money. It was about trust, a trust I'd guarded since childhood, because deep down, I'd always known Lily couldn't handle it. She was 5 years younger, the spontaneous one, the dreamer who'd turned borrowing into a habit and oops into a lifestyle. Growing up, I was the fixer. When she crashed Dad's car, I helped pay the bill. When she lost her job, I loaned her money. When she cried, I forgave her. But this was different. By the time my parents arrived, I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by evidence of her carelessness. Dad stepped inside and stopped dead in his tracks. "Good Lord." Mom covered her mouth, whispering, "This can't be Lily." I didn't answer. I just pointed at the door. The tenant said she rented it to them. Dad turned red, his hands clenching into fists. "She what?" I'd never seen him that angry. "She took money for something that wasn't hers," he said through gritted teeth. Mom's eyes were wet. She must have misunderstood. Maybe she thought she knew I cut her off. She knew it was wrong. The rage that had been simmering inside me finally boiled over. I picked up a shattered mug, one of a matching set Lily had given me 2 birthdays ago, and whispered, "She sold my piece for a few dollars." I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, knees pulled to my chest, the smell of beer clinging to the air, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. My phone screen glowed beside me, showing her contact name. Lily. I wanted to scream, to demand why, to ask if she'd laughed when those strangers moved in. Instead, I stared at her name and whispered, "What happened to you?" Somewhere deep inside, I already knew the answer. Lily hadn't changed. I just hadn't stopped believing she would. The next morning, when I finally worked up the nerve to call her, she answered in her usual cheerful tone. Oh, hey, you're back. How was your trip? I closed my eyes. Lily, I said quietly, what did you do to my apartment? A pause. Then the most infuriating thing imaginable, a laugh. Oh my God, don't freak out. I was going to clean up before you got back. Clean up, I repeated, my voice shaking. There were strangers living here. She sighed like I was overreacting. Relax. They paid me. It's not like they were staying for free. I felt my throat tighten. You rented my home out. It's not a big deal, Nancy, she said, still laughing. You weren't even using it. My voice cracked. It's not about using it, it's about respecting it. She didn't get it. She never had. When I hung up, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. For the first time in my life, I didn't just feel angry. I felt done. That night, I made a decision I never thought I'd have to make about my own sister. I was going to teach her what accountability actually looked like. By the next evening, I told Lily to come over. No more texts, no sugarcoating, no, maybe she didn't mean it. She needed to see what she had done not through the soft filter of excuses, but in full brutal reality. When she arrived, she didn't even look nervous. She just strolled in, humming under her breath, her bag slung casually over one shoulder like she was coming home for dinner. Wow, she said, wrinkling her nose as she glanced around. They really trashed the place, huh? I didn't move. I just watched her waiting for the moment she'd drop the act apologize or at least look guilty. That moment never came. This is your mess, I said finally, my voice low but steady. Her eyes flicked toward me. What do you mean, my mess? I wasn't even here when it happened. You rented it out, I shot back. You opened the door to strangers and took their money. You made this happen. She sighed dramatically, as if I were scolding her for spilling juice on the carpet. Nancy, you're blowing this way out of proportion. They paid rent. You were gone. It's not like anyone got hurt. My father's voice cut through the tension like thunder. Enough! I hadn't realized he'd been standing near the doorway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Do you have any idea what you've done, Lily? He asked, his tone cold, deliberate. You used your sister's home like it was some cheap rental. That's not a small thing. It's theft. Theft. Lily laughed incredulously. Dad, please. It's not like I broke in. Nancy gave me a key. I took a step forward. A key for emergencies, not to play landlord. She turned to me, her tone growing defensive. You're acting like I burned the place down. I needed money. Okay. For what I demanded. Shoes, a new phone. What was worth selling my trust for pocket change? She rolled her eyes and muttered, You wouldn't understand. And that was it, the sentence that ignited every suppressed memory of every time she'd said it before. When she dented my first car at 17, you wouldn't understand. When she borrowed my college money to buy a concert ticket, you wouldn't understand. When she cried her way out of responsibility and I covered for her again and again, you wouldn't understand. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't understand because I'd spent years believing love meant forgiveness, even when it meant losing myself in the process. Dad's patience broke. He slammed his palm on the dining table. That's enough. You're going to pay for every bit of damage, every item missing, every cent. Lily flinched but tried to mask it with sarcasm. With what my charm, I don't have that kind of money. Then find a way, Dad snapped. Actions have consequences. Mom stepped forward, her eyes full of tears. Lily, honey, you crossed a line. You can't just... But Lily raised her hand sharply. Oh, come on, Mom. You're all acting like I committed a crime. You did, I said quietly. You stole my space, my peace. You let strangers touch everything I worked for. For the first time, her expression faltered. She looked around at the cracked TV, the sticky floors, the coffee table missing its corner, and for just a second I thought I saw shame flicker across her face. But then she shrugged. Fine, she said. They made a mess. I'll clean it. I stared at her dumbfounded. Clean it, I repeated. Do you really think wiping the floor is going to fix this? God, you're so dramatic, she snapped back. It's just stuff. Something inside me cracked. No, Lily. I said, my voice shaking now. It's not just stuff. It's everything I built after years of cleaning up after you. Dad turned to her, his voice rising again. This isn't negotiable. You'll make this right, or we'll make sure you do. Lily's eyes widened, not from guilt, but from disbelief. Are you saying you'd take legal action against your own daughter? He didn't blink. If that's what it takes for you to grow up, yes. For a moment, the air was so heavy you could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Then Lily laughed that same condescending laugh she always used when cornered. This is ridiculous. You're all insane. She grabbed her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and started toward the door. Lily, Mom called softly. Please don't make this worse. Lily didn't even look back. You're all making a huge deal out of nothing." When the door shut behind her, the silence left in her wake was deafening. Dad sat down heavily, rubbing his temples. "She's not going to learn unless there's a real consequence," he said. I nodded slowly, my eyes still on the door. "Then that's exactly what she's going to get." Mom looked at me like she didn't recognize me. "Nancy, she's your sister." "Not tonight," I whispered. "Not after this." That night, I started gathering every piece of proof I had. Photos, messages, even screenshots of her, bragging online about making easy cash while I was abroad. When I sent the folder to Dad's lawyer friend, I attached one line in the email: "If she won't understand family, maybe she'll understand law." And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for standing up to her. I felt relief. The next morning, my apartment felt foreign. Every shadow reminded me of the chaos Lily left behind. Every scent carried a trace of her thoughtlessness, burnt takeout, spilled beer, and the ghost of cigarette smoke. I made coffee just to have something normal to hold, but even that tasted bitter. For the first time, I didn't see my place as home. I saw it as a crime scene. So I did what I'd promised myself. I started documenting everything. The cracked television, the stained couch, the chipped dishes, the missing lamp. Each photo felt like proof, not just of what she'd done to my apartment, but what she'd done to me over the years. The taking, the laughing, the pretending, it didn't matter. While I worked, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan, my boyfriend. He'd been waiting for me to land, and I hadn't even told him about the disaster yet. When I picked up, my voice cracked. "Hey, I just got home," I said quietly. He immediately caught the tone. "What happened?" I took a shaky breath. "My sister rented my apartment out while I was gone. To strangers. It's trashed." There was a long silence on his end before he said softly, "Nancy, I'm so sorry." I expected sympathy, maybe outrage. But what he said next made me pause. "Don't let guilt stop you from doing what's right," he said. "You've been protecting her for too long. It's time she faces the consequences." He was right. I'd always been the one covering for her, trying to keep the peace. But peace built on denial isn't peace, it's a slow kind of drowning. That afternoon, I went to the police station. The officer at the desk was polite, but visibly confused as I explained. So he said, jotting notes, "Your sister rented out your apartment to strangers without your consent." "Yes." "And they trashed it." "Yes." He blinked. "That's new." He filed it under trespassing, property damage, and unauthorized subletting. He told me to keep all the evidence just in case it escalated to court. I walked out feeling both lighter and heavier at once. Lighter, because I'd finally done something heavier, because it meant admitting my sister was now someone I needed legal protection from. Later that evening, my father called. His voice was tight. "She came by," he said, crying, screaming. "The works. She says you're trying to ruin her life." I sank into my chair. "She ruined mine first." He sighed. "I told her that. But you know your mother." "Of course I did. Mom had a heart too soft for her own good. She'd probably made Lily tea and told her everything could be fixed with a talk. I could almost hear it. 'She's your sister Nancy. Don't let this destroy you both.' But this wasn't about destruction. It was about boundaries." The next day, I met with my dad's friend, a lawyer named Mr. Dalton. He listened carefully as I explained, flipping through the folder of photos and texts I'd printed. After a while, he leaned back and said, "This isn't just bad behavior. It's technically theft and illegal subletting. You have a solid case." The word theft stung more than I expected, because it wasn't just furniture or money she'd stolen, it was trust. "Do I really have to sue her?" I asked quietly. "She's my sister." He gave me a sad smile. Sometimes family needs a consequence to understand respect. That night, I stared at my computer screen for a long time before opening the small claims court form. Each field I filled in, my name, her name. The damages felt like cutting a cord I'd been holding onto my entire life. When I hit submit, I didn't cry. I just whispered, "You taught me this, Lily. Every time you got away with something, you taught me what happens when people aren't held accountable." The next day, I woke to 20 unread messages from her. "Lily. Are you seriously doing this, Lily? It was just a mistake, Lily. You're insane, Nancy. We're family, Lily. You can't actually press charges on your own sister." The last one said, "Lily, you're going to regret this." I stared at it for a long time, then replied with one sentence, "Bring your receipts to court." 2 hours later, my dad called again. "She's saying you gave her permission to rent the place." My heart sank. "What? She claims you wrote her a note saying she could. She showed it to your mother." I closed my eyes. "She forged it, obviously," he said. "The handwriting looks like a 5-year-old's. A humorless laugh escaped me. So now I'm not just the villain, I'm also the liar. Dad's tone softened. You did the right thing, Nancy. Don't doubt that. But that night, lying in bed, the silence pressed down heavy on me. I kept thinking of us as little girls, Lily in her messy room, me cleaning mine while she promised to grow up one day. Maybe that promise had never been real. Maybe it was just something she said because she knew I wanted to believe it. The next morning, I got a notification court date confirmed. The message felt cold, clinical, but it was final. That evening, Mom came by. She looked older, tired, like she'd been crying. Please, she said, taking my hands. Don't do this to her. She's your sister. I pulled away gently. She did this to herself. Her eyes glistened. I just don't want you to hate each other forever. I smiled weakly. I don't hate her, Mom. I just finally stopped pretending she's someone she's not. When she left, I sat alone in the quiet, staring at the clean corner of the apartment I'd managed to restore. Half the room still smelled faintly of smoke, but I could breathe again. And in that fragile stillness, I whispered to myself, sometimes blood isn't a bond, it's a test. The morning of the court hearing, the air felt heavy, like even the weather knew what was about to happen. I stood outside the courthouse steps, coffee in hand, watching strangers rush past. Most looked preoccupied, irritated, nervous. I wondered if any of them were there for the same reason I was, to hold someone they once loved accountable. Inside, the hallway smelled like old paper and disinfectant. My dad waited by the bench, calm as ever. Mom was there too, clutching her purse, her eyes darting nervously between me and the double doors leading to the courtroom. She's here, Dad muttered quietly. I turned, and there she was, Lily. She walked toward us in a cheap blazer that didn't fit quite right, her hair tied back, her lips pressed into a thin, defiant line. Beside her stood a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, her lawyer. Her eyes met mine for the first time in weeks. So this is how far you'll go, she said, her voice dripping with resentment. I wanted to answer, but my throat tightened. Instead, I said calmly, we'll let the court decide. Inside the room was small, more intimate than I expected. The judge, a woman in her 50s, had a kind but firm presence. She looked at us both like she'd seen 1,000 families torn apart by things just like this. Lily's lawyer started the defense. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke. My client maintains that she had verbal permission from her sister, Ms. Dutton, to use and rent the apartment while she was abroad. The judge frowned. Do you have evidence of this agreement? He smiled awkwardly. Yes, Your Honor. A written note. He handed it to her, a crumpled sheet of lined paper with a few messy sentences written in blue pen. When the judge read it aloud, I almost laughed. Hey, Lily, if you need to use my place for a bit, go ahead. Nancy. The handwriting looked nothing like mine. The letters were uneven, childish. My stomach twisted. The judge's eyebrow arched. Ms. Dutton, she said, turning to me. Is this your handwriting? No, I said firmly. It's a forgery. She wrote that. The room went still. Lily's face flushed red, but she forced a smirk. Oh, come on, Nancy. Don't act like you didn't text me saying I could. I opened my folder and slid a printed copy of our messages across the table. The judge read them silently. Nancy, you can stop by if you need to grab something, but don't stay overnight. Lily. Don't worry, I won't. That was the last message before I left for Japan. The judge exhaled slowly and looked at Lily's lawyer. Do you have anything else to support your claim? He stammered. Well, the note seems consistent with... She cut him off. It's not consistent with anything except wishful thinking. Dad, seated behind me, crossed his arms. Mom looked like she might cry right there. When it was my turn, I stood up and handed the judge the thick folder I'd prepared. Photographs, receipts, messages, and the police report, I said. Everything from the day I found strangers in my home. The judge leafed through it carefully, each page turning like a countdown. After several long minutes, she set the papers down. Ms. Lily Dutton, she said calmly. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done? Lily didn't answer. She just stared at the floor, her jaw clenched. This isn't a misunderstanding, the judge continued. It's unauthorized subletting and property damage. You violated your sister's trust and the law. I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff. The words hit Lily like a slap. She looked up sharply. You're serious. You're really taking her side. The judge sighed. It's not about sides, Ms. Dutton. It's about responsibility. You're ordered to compensate for the damages, the missing items, and the legal fees, all documented here. For a long moment, Lily just sat there frozen. Then she turned to me, eyes blazing. You're heartless, she hissed. You'd rather see me suffer than forgive me. Her voice cracked on the last word, but there was no apology in it, only accusation. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay composed. I wanted you to take responsibility, not suffer, I said quietly. But I guess you don't know the difference. The bailiff called for the next case, and just like that, it was over. Outside, the afternoon sun was too bright. Mom followed behind us, her steps slow, her face pale. Lily walked out ahead, muttering to her lawyer before storming down the steps. Her voice carried back toward us. "She's not my sister anymore." Dad exhaled deeply. "Let her go," he said. But the words stayed with me heavier than the verdict, sharper than the judge's ruling. Because as much as I wanted to pretend I didn't care, part of me still did. On the drive home, Mom sat in silence, clutching her rosary. Finally, she whispered, "I never thought I'd see my girls standing on opposite sides of a courtroom." I turned to the window, my voice soft. Neither did I. That night, I came home to my half-restored apartment. The lavender diffuser was gone, but I lit a new candle, sandalwood, and rose, hoping to drown out the last traces of Lily's chaos. As the flame flickered, I whispered into the quiet. Justice feels colder when it's served to someone you love. And for the first time, I realized that closure doesn't always come with comfort. Sometimes it just comes with silence. A week passed after the verdict, and for the first time in months, my phone was quiet. No dramatic texts, no guilt-laced calls, just peace, heavy, unfamiliar peace. I thought maybe Lily had finally accepted the outcome, that she'd retreat, reflect, maybe even grow up a little. But peace in my family never lasts long. It started with a call from Dad. "She says she doesn't have the money," he said grimly. "She's asking if we can loan it to her." I almost laughed. "Let me get this straight. She rents my apartment without permission, destroys it, and now she wants you to pay the bill." "She's desperate," he said. "She wasn't desperate when she pocketed the rent money," I replied. "Tell her the answer's no." He hesitated. "You know your mother will say yes," I finished. "Of course she will." Sure enough, Mom called an hour later. "Nancy, sweetheart, maybe we can help her just this once," she pleaded. "You've always been the strong one." I closed my eyes, trying not to sound as tired as I felt. "That's exactly the problem, Mom. I've always been the strong one. And she's always been the one everyone saves. No more." Mom's voice softened. "But she's your sister. Being my sister doesn't erase what she did," I said quietly. "It just makes it hurt more." That night I got a message from Lily, short-clipped, almost transactional. "Lily. Can we talk about a payment plan, Lily? I can't pay everything at once." A payment plan, like I was a credit card company. Still, part of me hoped maybe this was her first step toward real responsibility. So I agreed to meet her the next day at a coffee shop near my place. She showed up 10 minutes late, of course, wearing sunglasses inside like she was hiding from the sun or from guilt. "Wow," she said as she sat down. "You look tired." I ignored the jab. "Let's talk numbers." She sighed dramatically. "I mean, I get that you're mad, but don't you think the court went a little overboard?" "It's not like I burned the place down." I blinked at her, stunned. "Are you serious right now?" "You rented out my home to strangers, Lily. My home. They broke my things. They stole from me." She shrugged, stirring her coffee. "Yeah, but it's not like I expected that to happen. That's the point," I snapped. "You never expect consequences. You just act, and when everything falls apart, you expect someone else to fix it." She looked away, muttering, "Whatever." I said, "I'll pay." "How much can you pay now?" I asked. She hesitated. "Maybe a couple hundred." "That won't even cover the cleaning service," I said flatly. She crossed her arms. "Well, that's all I have right now." It took everything in me not to lose my temper again. "Then you'd better start budgeting," I said, standing up, "because I'm not waiting another year to get back what you owe." Her eyes narrowed. "You've really changed, you know that good," I said. I finally learned my lesson. Over the next few months, her payments trickled in, always late, always accompanied by some snide comment. One transfer even came with a Venmo caption for my greedy sister. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so pathetic. Every time my phone pinged with her name, I felt a mixture of anger and sadness. She wasn't just paying off a debt, she was proving piece by piece that she still didn't understand what she'd broken. Meanwhile, my parents were caught in the middle. Dad, steadfast as ever, stayed on my side. But Mom, oh Mom, couldn't help herself. One evening over dinner, she said softly, "Maybe you could forgive part of the debt. She's trying, Nancy." I set my fork down and looked at her. "Mom, this isn't Monopoly money. It's not about forgiving a number. It's about showing her that choices matter." "I know," she said. "But she's family," I sighed. "Family doesn't mean unlimited chances." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. We'd had that conversation 100 times in different forms over different mistakes. Weeks passed. Then one morning, the last payment came through a small transfer with the caption, "There, you happy now?" I stared at it for a long time, the words blurry against the glow of my phone screen. After everything, the humiliation, the betrayal, the months of anger, that was how she ended it. No, sorry, no thank you, not even a hint of remorse. Just sarcasm, as if I were the villain in her story. I marked the case as settled, closed my banking app, and exhaled. But the feeling that washed over me wasn't victory, it was emptiness. That night, I sat by my window with a cup of tea, looking out at the city lights flickering like little promises. I thought about how much time I'd wasted trying to make my sister understand right from wrong. And then I realized maybe she never would. Maybe some people don't grow out of selfishness. Maybe they just learn to disguise it better. I whispered into the quiet room. Family doesn't break you in one big moment. It chips away at you in small betrayals until you can't recognize what love used to mean. The next morning, Mom texted me again. Mom, she's asking if you'll unblock her. I stared at the message for a long while before replying. Me, not yet. Because forgiveness, I've learned, isn't something you rush. It's something you earn. A week passed after that final payment. No messages, no calls, no apologies, just silence, the kind that feels heavier than noise. Then one night there was a knock on my door. When I checked the peephole, I froze. Lily. I hadn't seen her in person since the courtroom. Part of me wanted to ignore her, pretend I wasn't home, but curiosity, or maybe habit, got the better of me. I opened the door just enough for my voice to pass through. What do you want? She stood there, hands in her pockets, trying to look casual, but her eyes flickered with something I couldn't name. Guilt, defiance, maybe both. I just want to talk, she said. Can I come in? Not a chance, I replied. Say what you need to say from out here. She rolled her eyes, letting out a small, exaggerated sigh. Nancy, come on. Do we really have to be like this forever? I already paid you back. That's not the point, I said flatly. She frowned. Then what is you won? You got your money. The judge humiliated me. Dad won't even look at me anymore. What else do you want from me? I studied her face. For the first time, she didn't look untouchable. Her mascara was smudged and her voice wavered. But there was still something in her tone, that stubborn streak, that refusal to truly own what she'd done. I don't want anything from you, I said quietly. Just honesty. For once in your life, admit what you did was wrong. She stared at me like I'd asked for something impossible. Then she laughed bitterly. You act like I killed someone. I made a mistake, Nancy. People make mistakes. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. A mistake is forgetting to lock the door, not renting out your sister's home to strangers. You didn't just cross a line, you erased it. Her voice cracked, anger breaking through her composure. So what? You're never going to forgive me? I hesitated. I don't know, I said softly. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It takes time. And right now, I'm not there yet. She looked at me for a long moment, searching for something in my eyes. Maybe a trace of the sister who used to cover for her, defend her, make excuses for her. But that version of me was gone. Fine, she said, her voice trembling. Whatever you need to tell yourself. And then she turned and walked down the hallway. Her footsteps echoed off the walls, fading with each step until there was nothing left but silence. I closed the door slowly and leaned against it. For a moment I thought I might cry, but I didn't. I just exhaled long and steady. The truth is, forgiveness isn't always loud or cinematic. Sometimes it's just quiet acceptance, realizing that you can love someone deeply and still choose to walk away from the version of them that keeps hurting you. Over the next few days, I threw myself into rebuilding what Lily had broken. New couch, new lamp, fresh paint on the walls. I replaced my diffuser with one that smelled like vanilla and cedar, this time something warmer, softer. As I unpacked the last box, I found a photo tucked inside an old book, and Lily, maybe 10 and 15 years old, holding hands in front of our childhood house, both smiling, both innocent. I stared at it for a long time. Then, without bitterness, I whispered, I hope you find your peace too. That night I sat by the window again, lights low, soft music playing from my speaker. For the first time in months, the air smelled clean. The quiet didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. I sent a short message to my dad. Me. Everything's fixed. Apartment's finally back to normal. He replied a minute later. Dad, I'm proud of you, kiddo. You did what needed to be done. I smiled. Maybe that was enough. As I curled up on my couch, I thought about everything I'd learned. How love without boundaries turns into resentment. How peace isn't something you find, it's something you protect. I didn't unblock Lily. Not because I hated her, but because I finally understood that distance can be its own form of love, the kind that says, I wish you well, but I won't let you destroy me again. Before I went to bed, I whispered one last thing to the empty room. Family taught me many things, but the hardest lesson was that love means saying no when you have to. And for the first time in a long, long while, I slept through the night.